I'm Randy Jeffers, and it's so important to have passion in your life. When you're passionate about the things you believe in and the things that you're doing, it's just like life is just so much simpler. It's easier to accomplish great things if you're passionate about them. And I want to tell you a story about a guy by the name of Philippe, who he was in France, and he became engrossed at the dentist's office in this article he was reading about the Twin Towers in New York. And that's right when they were building the Twin Towers back in the 1970s. And he just envisioned in his mind how he was going to walk a tightrope between these two towers. Now, Philippe had started off as a kid. He gotten himself in some trouble, and then he got himself hooked on being a tightrope walker, and it got him out of trouble, and it took all of his time, and he became so good. He mastered everything that there was to do on a tightrope. But then he got to a point where he thought that was kind of boring, and so he decided he was going to raise that tightrope up in the air, and he was going to do things that nobody else had ever done or could do, and that he was just going to be the master of high wire balancing, and so he started doing that. And he started practicing, and he just was the greatest at all these things. But he saw this article, and he saw the World Trade Center, and all he could think of was how was he going to walk between those two towers. Now, I mean, it's a mind-boggling thing to even be thinking about. Most of us that have any sense, I mean, we wouldn't even want to dream about that. But that was his dream, and he became passionate about that. And all he could do was envision himself out there on that tightrope between those two towers, walking across that tightrope. Now, that's about a quarter of a mile up in the air. Now, if you've ever taken a walk and just walked a quarter of a mile, you know how far that is. It is a long ways. But can you imagine being a quarter mile up in the air? I mean, the wind that is up there, all the things that you don't have down on the ground. When you're a quarter of a mile up in the air, it's just different. And to be able to walk on a tightrope, I mean, it's crazy, really, for most of us, but not for him. That's what he wanted to do, and so he spent 6 years just basically, focusing on this dream of his, and he collected all the information that he could find on how the Twin Towers were built, and he kept practicing his high wire act, and he started saving money for his flight to get to the United States. So when he got to the United States, I mean, the first thing that he wanted to do was go see the World Trade Center. So, he took his buddies with him, and they disguised themselves a number of different ways, and they pretended to be construction workers. They did all kinds of things to really survey the Twin Towers and get up there, and they were able to get up on the roof, and lots of different things that they researched to figure out how to make all this happen. Well, on a Tuesday night, he and his friends, they went up into the towers. They had their equipment with them, and they used a bow and arrow. And they fired this bow and arrow from the North Tower over to the South Tower. They fired a fishing line, and then they once they got that across, then they took the fishing line and they put a little bit a thicker line, and they ran that across, and then they pulled another one that was a little bit thicker, until they finally got this 1-inch steel cable that was running between the towers. Well, early in the morning, on Wednesday morning, when Wall Street was just starting to happen, there he was, right on the high wire between the two towers, ready to perform. And as the amazed crowd down below, they were just marveling at this thing, I understand, but it was just an incredible sight. And of course, the local authorities, they gathered to apprehend this guy because it was an illegal thing that he was doing. But he was a showman, and he focused on his act. He was passionate about it, and he was focused, and he refused to let anything interfere. The policemen that were shouting at him, to stop. He didn't listen to them. He actually did 8 trips back and forth, and of course, every time he'd get to one side of the tower, the policemen were there to arrest him, and he'd turn around and go back. And I guess he was dancing. I read a story about one of the policemen that was talking about it, and he said it was just, everybody was just unbelievably amazed. But finally, it started to rain, and he knew he was going to get arrested and everything, so he turned himself in, and it was a little bit rough because when they arrested him, then they were a little bit rough shoving him down the steps, and he said that was the toughest part of the whole ordeal, coming down the steps with the officers. But can you imagine? I mean, what it took for that to happen? I mean, it was just an incredible thing. I mean, he could have let all these distractions dissuade him from his dream, but he didn't. I mean, he had to raise all this money. He had to elude all the security to scout the towers, and then they had to stretch this big cable. I mean, these are things that, I mean, you would just think they would be impossible to do, but he did them. And I mean, this is a feat of great magnitude. I mean, it's just incredible. But it took his passion to really make that happen, to accomplish his vision, and those things, they just dwarfed the obstacles. And that's what we want in our life, right? We want passion that dwarfs the obstacles to our life. Now, passion, that's that inner thing, that feeling we have inside of us, that fire that we have that propels us to do great things. I guess one of the best ways I know to describe it is when you met your wife for the first time, when maybe you were young, or if you were a young guy and you met your wife and you got serious about her and you fell in love with her. I mean, wild horses couldn't keep you apart. I mean, you'd crawl a mile on your hands and knees on razor blades if you had to, because you had to be with her. And that's passion. But if you have passion about your life and about the things you do, I mean, it is amazing what happens when all that happens. So, next time, you think about how tough things are going for you in your life, think about what it is that excites you. What is it that makes you passionate? And those are the things that you want to do. Do things that are passionate in your life, and all of a sudden everything else seems to be a little bit easier. Here's to your absolutely incredible success.